Okay, we are going to talk about the zero product property. This is a very key concept. It's probably new to most of you. It's actually quite simple when it's explained, but it can be kind of difficult for you if you haven't seen it before. It's brand new, so open your brains. Let's get ready to learn this key concept. It's going to be a building block that we're going to need as we learn more about factoring and solutions to quadratic equations. Just previewing that. We're not going to do quadratic equations or any of that today, but this major building block is a key concept in that understanding. So let us move over to our sketch pad and let's learn about this zero product property. So, all right, let's go here and let's talk about the zero product property. In Eureka Math, this is AM1, lesson 17. All right. Okay, so let's hit it. So let me ask you a question. And it's gonna start really basic, and we're just gonna say, well, if I know that x is 0, then my solution set to this equation is what? And this is almost so obvious that it's not worth stating, but we will state it anyway. So our solution set to this problem is 0. Okay, we're saying x is 0. All right, so that's our basic building block. Baby steps is where we're starting. Now let me ask you a different question. If I am going to say x times y equals 0, I want you to think about what I can multiply two numbers. Which two numbers can I multiply together to give me 0? Can I try a really little number for x and a really big number for y? Could I multiply those two together and get 0? So take a break, pause the video, and think of two numbers that you can multiply together to give you a 0. And I will break here. Okay, now that we've come back, if you thought about this, you probably came to the realization that there are no two numbers that you can multiply together to give you 0, except one of these numbers being 0 itself. So I could say if x is 0, I can solve this equation, because if x is 0 times anything equals 0, right? So x equals 0 is one solution, but there's another solution, and that can be if y is 0, right? Because anything times 0 is also 0. And for those of you who tried to think of any two other numbers that you could multiply together where one of them is not, where they're both not 0, there is no number, there are no two numbers that you can multiply, no matter how big or how small, that you could multiply them together and give you 0. One must be 0. So let's look at this. Let me ask the question. Do both numbers need to be 0, or just one? And the answer is, you can pause and think about it, and the answer is just one needs to be 0. Right? Because you could have a solution, because 3 times 0 equals 0. So in that case, y would be 0. You'd be x equals 3 and y equals 0. right? So both of them don't need to be 0. Just one of them needs to be 0. So let's keep going. And let's say, now we can talk about what the zero product property really says. The zero product property says two things multiplied together equals 0 if and only if x equals 0 or y equals 0. And that is our zero product property. Very important. So, and this is going to be the basis. This is the basis of so much math that we're going to be doing. And it's going to become so obvious to you, hopefully, as we go forward. But it has a ton of application. So let's start with one of those applications. And you're not going to see x's and y's. You're going to see two things multiplied together equaling 0. And you're going to have to make a determination about what is the solution. So let's look at a somewhat more, well, I don't know if it's more involved than the last one, but we're just going to write this out. X times x minus 2 equals 0. So when does x times x minus 2 equals 0? It's not just one answer. We're going to be dealing with equations that have two answers. There are two answers to this problem. Two answers. So what does the zero product property say about two things multiplied together equaling 0? Well, let's just circle those two things that are multiplied together. We have an x, and that's multiplied by an x minus 2. And remember, we're dealing with an or, not an and situation. So this expression on the left will equal 0 when either one of these things equals 0. So if x equals 0, our first thing could equal 0, or our second thing could equal 0. So let's just be really clear and write this out. Okay. So when does x equal 0? Well, x equals 0 when x is 0. So that's our first answer. And when does x minus 2 equal 0? Well, let's solve the equation. And we see that x minus 2 is 0 when x equals 2. So notice, it's an or. So this is true when x is 0 or x is 2. So how do we write that as a solution set? Let's go back. Now we're back to our building blocks. This is stuff that we learned over the last couple of weeks of class. And if it's a 0 or a 2, we write them in numeric order. 0 is less than 2. So we write our curly brackets. Should we want to, we could also graph it on a number line. Remember, we're graphing an or situation. So we have a 2 or a 0. So this is solution set notation. This is graphing form notation. And we can even go back in here and check. Let's check our answer. I know we don't like our check step, but it can always be an easy way to check. Here, we'll make our check step in green. So if x is 0, then is 0 times 0 minus 2 equals 0. Does 0 times negative 2 equal 0? Check. But we have to check our other answer. So does 2, we're going to plug a 2 in for our x, times 2 minus 2 equals 0? Well, does 2 times 0 equal 0? Check. So we have used, let's summarize. we used the zero product property to identify the two solutions to our equation as 0 and 2. All right, we're going to do, wait, oh my goodness, we forgot to do what we've been doing lately. Got it right, happy cat. Good job. Okay, so let's go and do another problem here. Create new problem, and we're just going to build a little bit. So we knew that our x times x minus 2 equals 0. We had our solutions, but let's just get a little bit more. We always like to write our things in blue. My favorite color. Let's write this problem out. X plus 4 times x minus 7 equals 0. A little bit more involved. I'd like you to try and solve this one on your own. And remember, we have two things multiplied together equals 0. So we know that one thing has to be 0 or the other thing has to be 0. So pause the video, give it a try. Okay, now I'm going to assume that you've come back, tried this problem, and we're just going to say, well, we know that this, if this is 0 or this is 0, then we have a true statement. We have found our solution set. So remember, x plus 4 equals 0 or x minus 7 is 0. Okay, so if x plus 4 is 0, we get x equals minus 4. And if x minus 7 is 0, plus 7, x equals 7. These are our two answers, and we write that in a solution set like this. So we have two answers, and then we can do our check step. At -4, let's see, -4, whoops, plus 4 times -4 minus 7 equals 0. Let's see, 0 times -11 equals 0. Check. That's A. And then check step B is, we'll try 7. 7 plus 4 times 7 minus 7 equals 0. Does 11 times 0 equals 0? Check. Cool. Happy cat. All right. Whoops. Get rid of happy cat. We haven't solved another one. Can't quite bring in the second happy cat yet. Let's look. Let's go one more step involved in this zero product property. A little bit more involved, and we're just going to see that it doesn't just need to work for, or it doesn't just work for 2. It can work for multiple. And let's just get crazy here. Whoops, sorry people. I'm going to have to put my phone off. I just had my phone ring. We're going to turn that off for a second. All right. Okay, so if I have 4 things multiplied together, I want you to consider and think about what has to be true. Well, I'll let you pause and think about it. And why don't you pause? Think about it. And the answer is just one of these things has to be 0. If 0 times anything times anything times anything is going to be 0. So as long as any one of these 4 things is 0, or x minus 1 equals 0, or x plus 1 equals 0, or x minus 4 equals 0. Any of these things is being true will make this whole thing true. If x plus 1 is 0, let's just pretend that that was 0. Well, anything times 0 times anything is going to be 0. So our solution set here is going to be x is 0 or x equals 1, or in this case, x equals minus 1 or x equals 4. So let's write that as a solution set. And let's go from least to greatest, -1, 0, 1, 4. And there's our solution set. And I'll leave it to you to check your answer. And, well, let's just check one of them. Let's just check to see that negative, let's see that 1 works. So if 1 works, we have to plug in a 1 for x. And so we get 1 times 1 minus 1 times 1 plus 1 times 1 minus 4 equals 0. So 1 times 0 times 2 times negative 3 equals 0. Yeah, because 1 times 0 is 0. 0 times 2 is 0 times negative 3 is 0. So 0 equals 0. Check. Happy cat. Good. All right. So now I want to make one other observation here. Let's move. Oops. Woo. All right. Oh. Let's take this happy cat. Whoa, come here, move. We're going to move happy cat out of the way for a second. And I want to show you one mistake that may get made when you're looking at this answer. Now, I want you to notice that the answer to this question here is -4 and 7. We're back on this problem over here on the left. Notice it's a -4 and a +7. So what is a typical mistake that might be made when you're solving this equation? You might, if you think you've got it all figured out and you're fast and loose and you think you're a whiz-bang algebra student, you're going to come in here and say, oh, x plus 4, x minus 7. Oh, my answer is 4 and -7. Because you're going to see this +4 and this -7, and you're going to think that this is your answer. But notice that is wrong. Don't make that mistake. Make sure that you've done the math, because if the answer is x plus 4 equals 0, then x has to be a -4, because it's the opposite of the +4 and the opposite of the -7. So if we want to stick with, if we want to stick with happy cat, we need to make sure that we're not going too fast and loose. Okay, so one last piece of, I'm going to stop here. I think that this is the zero product property. There's an advanced lesson that I'm going to teach that I'm just going to put that in a separate, I'm just going to put that one in a separate video because it merits its own discussion. Okay, we're out of here. I'll see you in class. Hope you enjoyed the video. Oh, well, I'm sorry. I did not give you an opportunity to cheer.